Hi, I'm Kimmy with On William Street, and we are here to help you become a more confident quilter, from the piecing to the quilting and everything in between. This week we have 10 fun border quilting motifs to share. So don't forget, all of the information you're going to see in the video can also be found in our blog post below. There's lots of pictures and diagrams and all the quilting motifs drawn out there for you as well. So don't forget to go over and check that out. You can find the link below the video. Also, while you're there, check out our shop and find your next modern quilting project. So whenever I'm doing a new motif or you're learning a quilting design that you haven't done before, I definitely recommend doodling it out. It's going to be a lot easier to kind of get used to the fill on paper, be comfortable with it there, and then you can move over to the quilt on the machine. So we're going to start there. I'm just going to show you how to doodle them, how to draw them first, and then we'll go and move over and quilt them all out on the machine. So the first one I have is just a spiral border, and this is a really good motif to kind of have in quilting. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. You can put it in big spaces, smaller spaces. So we're going to start there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fill my border. If you have a border that's on the edge, you might want to stay in 1/4 of an inch if you don't want your stitching to get cut off in your binding. So keep that in mind. But this border is on the quilt that I'm going to be doing. I don't really need to worry about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill the whole space. If you're doing your border design and you're keeping it really skinny in the middle, it's going to look like it's unfinished. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to kind of start at the bottom. We're going to loop up to the top and loop around. And this is just like a big C. If you're thinking back to cursive, just keep going, a big O. And we're going to loop all the way in. And this one I'm just going to gently loop around. You can definitely stop sharp if you want to, but for this one I'm going to loop around. And then we're going to come back on the outside. So make sure that you leave some space on that bottom one. Fill the space, but leave a little space to get back out here. Then we're going to go to the next one. And I'm really just trying to keep them about the same size. And like I said, just really filling that space so that when I'm all done, the whole border is quilted, and you can just keep going all the way on. This works great. You put a circle in the corner, turn it, and then keep going however you need to. So that's our first one, is our circles. Another fun and easy circle motif is going to be like the string of pearls, but I like to add a little bit to it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my circle, and I'm going to do it about 3 or 4 times. And what this does is it's going to allow me to fix anything. If it's swampy, if it's not perfectly round, with those additional rounds, you can fix it and make it look a little bit better. And then we're just going to go the opposite direction. And if I get a bad piece like that, I would just go a couple more times. So it's a really good beginner motif because it's very forgiving. Whereas when you're doing a string of pearls, you're trying to get them all to be exactly the same size and trace on top of your lines. It can be a little bit harder to learn. So this is a great one to get started with. And the same thing with this one, you know, it's easy to put that in a corner and then move on and keep going. Our next border design is just going to be figure 8s. So these ones work really well in lots of shapes. You'll see me use them a lot. So we're just going to go and just, again, hitting the tops and the bottoms and trying to keep them the same size. So we're just going to come up, hit the top, and then curve back and go down to the bottom. And you can make them taller and skinnier. You can also make them fatter and wider. So it really just depends on the look that you're going for. They're very versatile. Along with that is our ribbon candies. So these are going to look like the old ribbon candies. And that's the same thing. You can make them taller and skinnier. You can make them wider. But instead of looping back, we're just going to come down, loop around. And like you're drawing a circle or running around a tree, or maybe like you can imagine a dot there and you have to circle around the dot. Again, you can make them skinnier and closer together, or you can spread them out and make them wider as well, just like those ribbon candies. So those are some motifs that I use all the time. I use them in backgrounds and borders and shapes. They fit triangles, they'll fit squares. There's a lot you can do with that. Our next one is a fun triangle design. This one we're starting to get a little more complex. We are going to go down this way, and then we're going to actually come back this way. And this one is still a fairly fluid motif. I'm not worrying about very straight lines or anything yet. And I'm just going to go up and I'm going to make a triangle. but I'm just gonna gently curve that. I'm not gonna stop and move harshly. I'm gonna gently curve that. Then we're gonna come back and we're just gonna echo inside of that 3 times. Now, when you're quilting, if you want to move to different places, always think in odd numbers. If I had done 4, it would put me back over here on this side, but by doing 3, it's putting me as close to that edge as possible. And we're gonna come over here along our seam liner edge, and we're just gonna make another one. Again, we're just gonna make another one and then fill the border. When I get to the edge of the border, we're gonna move to the top. Here, we're just gonna start here. Pretend like that was a finished unit, then we're gonna come back along the top, and then we're just gonna fill in this side with that same motif going in the opposite direction. And then we would just continue around the border that way. This is also one that's a lot of fun. It's super, like I said, because it's very fluid, it's really easy to quilt, and it's just a lot of fun. You get in the flow and you just get going. So the next one that I'm going to show you is we're going to start playing with feathers. So this one is going to be a half feather. We're just going to do one side of petals. We're not going to try to do both. So the same thing, you usually want to make sure that you're filling that whole space. So I'm just going to do the bump backs here. You can also do a more playful feather if you don't want to do the bump back and worry about tracing back along on your seam. You could always just do open petals like that as well. But it's just a half of a feather, and that works good in, again, any sort of border shape to do that half feather. After the half feather, another one that I really like is my fancy feather, and this one I am going to do a center spine, and if you are more comfortable, you can definitely draw that in first. I always like to do wavy center spines. If you don't want to stitch it in, you could mark it with a marking pen first, and then we're just going to do a little funky feather with a little bump on the end of the petal. And I am going to alternate back and forth, and the reason I'm going to do this is so that when I'm done, I'm over here. So I'm not having to worry about coming back down and doing the other side. Filling the space. The little bit bigger ones are getting, some little petals stuck in there to help move around those curves. And then we would just keep going all the way until that border is filled. So you can always do actual feathers, fancy feathers, mix it up. So that's another fun border design. Next, this one I'm actually going to go ahead and use a ruler on. We're down to the last 3 designs. And a lot of these are more of my straight line designs, and this one I'm definitely going to use a ruler. You don't have to, but I want to make sure that they're nice and even, so I have a little bit of a bump ruler there. And it's just, we're going to do the same thing. It's going to be down and back. So on the first down, we're just going to do a bump, just like that. And on the back, we just want to do the exact opposite of that bump. So like I said, I'm going to use my ruler to space this perfectly, and then you just have this fun little motif filled in. This one's a little more open, so if you don't like quite as dense quilting, this is a good option. If you like more dense quilting, you can always come in and actually do some fill either inside these shapes, or you can actually do your fill on the outside of these shapes and leave the insides not quilted. And that just adds a lot of texture and dimension. So if you like a little bit more dense quilting, those are some options to take that design and really fill in that negative space. And that's really going to make, this is going to make the negative space stand out a little bit more, the back area. And if you fill in the back area, that's going to really make these shapes stand out a little bit more. Whatever you don't quilt is what's going to stand out. All right, so the next one I'm going to show you is called a piano keys. A lot of people refer to it as piano keys, and I love this one too. And it's just going to come down, and we're going to do 2 close lines right next to each other, then move along the edge. 2 close lines right next to each other, and I'm just going to try to evenly space them. Depending on the size of my border, I usually use a ruler for this one as well. and it's super fun. It looks really good. It works really nicely if you have busier fabric because you're not trying to compete with the print, but it gives you that little bit of texture and dimension there. And then the very last border design I'm going to show you today is similar to our swirls at the beginning, but we're going to do some squares. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to put our square in here. I'm not going to worry about saving space because I'm not going to go back out to the outside. I'm actually just going to fill it in and then just cut over. Now I like to alternate, so I'm going to go down first, make my next square, fill it in, and then when I come back out this time, I'm going to go up on the next one. And you can make these all the same shape, try to make them some nice squares, or like some of the other designs, you can alternate and do different sizes. You can do skinny, you can do way drawn out. So just make it work with your design, your aesthetic, and then what fits your space. So those are our 10 border designs that I'm going to show you today. So now that we've sketched them all out, we're going to go ahead and go down on the sewing machine, and I will quilt them for you. I am stitching them out on my long arm, but they're going to work the same way on your domestic machine. Just remember that you're moving the fabric instead of the machine, but we're going to be following the same stitch path. So again, we're going to start with those swirls, and we're just going to come up and swirl around, making sure that when we come back, we're leaving a little bit of space here on the bottom so that we can then swirl back out. And then from here, just go ahead and repeat, trying to keep those swirls all about the same size. All right, so for our next design, we're going to do those modified pearls. So I'm going to go ahead and do like 3 or 4 circles. This one is at the top of my quilt, so I've kind of got my basting line here. So I'm going to try to keep that inside. The rest of them, I don't have to worry about it. But if you're on the edge of your quilt, make sure that you're accounting for that binding so that you're not cutting off your design if it's a design you don't want cut off. So we're just going to do 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to go the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, and then just continue down the quilt. All right, so our next motif is going to be our ribbon candies, and those you're just going to go kind of away and then loop back, away, loop back, away, loop back, and that's how I remember how to do those. Now we're ready to go ahead and quilt out the ribbon candies. And again, we're just going to go ahead and just, I'd like to imagine that you've got like dots in a alternating pattern down the quilt, and you're just going to be quilting around those dots or running around those dots with your machine. So as I'm going along, if you want a fun quilt to practice these motifs in as well, we do have instructions for this quilt on our YouTube channel. So you can head over there and grab that and make this. It's just a jelly roll quilt. It goes together quick and easy. So if you're looking for a way to practice these motifs, this is a great quilt to do that on. So our next one that we're going to be doing is our little triangle. So I'm going to start at the top because that's where I'm at. And I'm just going to go down, up, and then do the 3 to fill in, and then move my way all the way down the strip, and then I'll come back and do the bottom. So now on the way back, I'm going to be doing a half triangle first. So I'm just going to come down and do over as if I was doing one, but I'm just going to be doing half of it first. And then from here, I'm just going to repeat that same thing, making sure that I'm filling in those spaces I already created. So for the next one, we're going to do the half feather. So for this one, I'm going to start in the bottom corner, and remember, we're just doing one side. I'm going to go ahead and do the bump back feather, so I'm just going to be bumping back along the top in between feathers. But like I said, if you don't want to have to trace over the top or copy over, stitch over your lines, you can go ahead and just do more of a free motion and do the full back and forth of the feather. Now that we've done our half feather, we're going to go ahead and do the funky feather. So this one we are going to have the spine down the middle. I have tried to mark it in, but it's not staying very well. So if you're more comfortable, like I said, you can go ahead and mark a spine. You can also go ahead and quilt a spine in if you want to do that first. I'm just going to go ahead and just freehand it. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm not going to try to make it straight down the center. I do like to have kind of a wavy spine there. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do the looped video. So like I said, I'm going to use my ruler on this one. I like it. It's going to help me stay a little bit more exact. So we're just going to go down, and I'm just going to make the loops all this direction, and then we'll go back the opposite direction when we come back. Now I'm just going to go back, and I'm just going to be going exactly the opposite direction. This motif is called the piano keys, and we're just gonna go over and we're just gonna do 2 stitches real close together and then go over a little distance, do 2 lines real close together. Because I'm gonna use my ruler on this one as well, because I wanna make sure that they're staying nice and straight. I also wanna make sure that they're staying evenly spaced, so I'm gonna go about 1 inch in between them. And then our last motif is just our square, our swirly squares. So remember, we're gonna go ahead and go out and we're just gonna fill the whole space because we're just gonna shoot straight out from that center to move over to our next square. So as you're practicing these motifs, I definitely recommend doodling them first, getting used to the way that they move and they flow with the pencil or the marker, and then go ahead and try doing them on your quilt. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find us over on Facebook and Instagram. And like I said, check out our shop, look at the blog, get more details and the diagrams and everything as well. And we'll see you next time.